16, 4 local Harrow Strait, Sea State 4. 4 strike jets knife the gray troughs at 40 feet, canopies fogged with salt. No climb, no radio, 1 pass, the lead says, voice flat in the helmet. The alt tape jitters at 30, 8, 40, 130, 9 as the belly slaps spray. On his left, the wingman edges lower until the tips of his pylons seem to scrape the water. 2 frigates wait beyond the scary zone with long-range missiles that like altitude and distance, one with point defense teeth built for knife fight ranges. The only way through is the seam between those envelopes. The only way out is the same seam in reverse. On the flagship AFS Resolute, the operations room glows red. Radar scopes bloom and fade. Contact 4 low, fasts bearing 0. 8-4 range 2-8 nautical miles, altitude under 100 feet. Calls Lieutenant Simon Hale, the weapons officer, fingers dancing across the Sentinel console. They are skimming the shadow of Black Gull Island, longbow 2 on standby, illuminators tracking. Captain Leena Ward steps closer, eyes on the range rings. She knows the numbers better than her own pulse. Longbow's minimum range will chew them if the attackers slip much closer under the island's lip. Get a stable track. Do not waste a shot we can't guide. Where's Halberd? She asked. F's Halberd on our port quarter, 2,000 yards abeam, Hale replies. Shield 6 point, defense warmed and spinning, kite 1. 2 is inbound from a north Petrel 18 mile, saltitude 800 feet. Leena feels the weight of that last fact. A returning helicopter inside the missile basket. A friendly line in the wrong place at the wrong time. She keys the net, kite 1, 2, this is Resolute, divert south immediately, do not cross the inner ring. Say your fuel, kite 1, 2, Winchester on fuel in 10 minutes, turning south. Comes the pilot's clipped reply, the map updates, a thin friendly triangle arcs away from danger. Will it be far enough in time? Out on the deck, assault, wet wind shreds the last word. Men hustle to stations, hatches slam. The main gun's barrel slews, indifferent to prayer or arithmetic. At 40 feet, the lead strike pilot, Captain Rafi Qadir, eases his kestrel a 9 a hair lower to keep the island between him and the ship's radar. The altimeter dances at numbers that make the back of his neck itch. He keeps the horizon straight with a line on the canopy that is more habit than mark. 2, check fuel, he says. 2 is 7-300, Lieutenant Selim Darzi replies. Bingo +2, 3, 4, green, both voices say. The second element skims 100 yards back, spray ghosting over their boots, call signs dry while their faces are wet. Rafi flips the arming safe, guard, and watches 2 green eyes wink on. 2 500 kilo load. Rag bombs sit under his wings, armed for delay, fuses set to bite only after a half second of steel and spray. He taps the panel, fuse set, 1 pass. If you miss, you keep your hands away from that pickle and live to regret it. Copy, Selim says. Humor tries to find a place to sit and can't. The island rice a black shape, gulls blowing sideways over it, white water clawing at the rock. The flight tucks into its wind shadow. The radar horizon does the rest. For a dozen beats, the world is only granite and gray and an alt tape that shivers between numbers that would make most pilots quit. On Resolute, the scope loses them. Hale's voice tightens. Contacts lost behind Black Gull, bearing unchanged, estimate time to pipe up 12 to 15 seconds if they climb, longbow illuminators ready, tracker locked to last solution. But if they stake that low, our look, down burn, through will be late, hold, Leena says. She feels the wrong shape of a command in her mouth. Don't waste the only shot that might matter. She glances at the sea, whitecapped slap the bow, the hull groans. The ship feels alive in the ugly way steel feels alive in weather. On F's Halberd, the point defense controller watches the Petrel fire control radar paint the island's edge. The dish hunts for phantoms below clutter. The algorithm tries to pick signals from spray and bird and rock. Target merge, the petty officer says, perplexed. Petrel sees 1 blob low, could be 2. System classifies as single track. Classify the blob as hostile, Halberd's captain says. Stand by for split. It will split, it does. The scaries fall away and the jets are there. 2 at first, white wakes drawing lines beneath them that vanish as quickly as they are born. Visual, someone shouts on Resolute's bridge. even though the ops room will know before the eyes on glass. Hale scope flares, 2 confirmed, bearing 083, range 1, 5 nautical miles, altitude 40 feet, longbow seeking, rate 2 high, min, range gate in 15 seconds. Kite 1, 2 clear, Leena asks, south of the ring now, Hale says, clear, take the shot, 1, now Leena orders. Longbow launchon, Hale shouts, and the deck thumps as a white spear leaps from Resolute in tears, the air booster smoke blown flat across the sea. Men in foul, weather gear watch it go with the expression sailors have borrowed from artillerymen since both learned to read the sky. In the Kestrel's cockpit, the tone of distant death lives in the headset as a crackle that isn't radio and isn't weather. Rafi doesn't flinch. He shoves the throttles to the stop and shaves a foot from the numbers that say 40. The missile rushes toward a patch of air where he was 3 seconds ago. It wants a steady angle and a steady path. It gets neither. It searches down, it sees sea and sky, it glances off glare, it keeps going, running out of authority, dragged by gravity toward a meeting with a wave it didn't plan to have. On Resolute, the longbow rides 12 nautical miles, then goes dumb, seeker starved. Hale watches it go stupid cleanly, like a logic problem that refuses to resolve because a given is a lie. Missile failed to track, lost in clutter, he says. Shield, Leena asks on the net to Halberd. Shield acquiring comes the response. Petrel classifies single track merged. Engage, Leena says, teeth tight. She drags a hand across her mouth. It comes away tasting of salt and old metal. The kestrels crest a wave and the ships appear, hulls hammering in the sea. Wake lines converge, masts stab the sky, antennae skeletal and indifferent. Rafi's breath shortens into metronome beats. In, he says, and Selim says in, and the flight dives into a space the human body was not built to enjoy. Guns wake first, Resolute's 120, 7 main spits flame and smoke, shells punching holes in the mist with a rhythm that is terrible and pretty. The rounds land wide, fire control sight is chasing a number it can't pin down, 20, millimeter mounts on both ships chatter. Tracers lace the air red and green, lines you could almost hold if you were fool enough to try. Rafi's head goes quiet. The ship grows in his glass until it fills the world, a slab of gray with a white number, and leaves on it. He presses the red stud, the jet's nose lurches, 2 black eggs drop, falling for a heartbeat as if they forgot what is next. Then they meet water tipped at an angle and skitter, not skipping stones, too heavy for that, more like mad seal's belly, flopping from a slipway and still deciding what they want to be. One slams into Halberd's starboard quarter, low. It punches through metal that always thought itself safe until it wasn't. It rides along the skin inside, hits a beam, changes its mind about up and down, and exits the deck screaming, throws itself into the sea and sinks. The fuse is late to the party by the hair of a second and never says a word. The other hits short. Spray leans back and laughs, and the sea keeps it, swallowing the noise in a hiss. Impact on Halberd, no detonation. Resolute's bridge watch calls, voice throttled by adrenaline. Smoke and spray only, shield launch delayed. Halberd's point, defense controller grinds out over the net. Petrel classified merged track as single, split caused solution crash, rebooting now, 30 seconds. 30 seconds is a long time today, Leena says to herself as much as anyone else. Rafi doesn't look. He has no time to tally wins that errant wins. He jinks left, then right, following shadows in water more than lines on a map. Selim follows like a thought. 2 off safe, Selim calls, voice steady because it has nowhere else to go. No secondary, 3 and 4, Rafi asks, slicing behind a spray curtain thrown by Resolute's bow. The main gun's shells slam behind him, close enough that the sound happens to his bones before his ears. 3 is inbound, 5 seconds, the second element lead says, 4 stacked. On Resolute, Hale sees the second pair break, the island's line. 2 more low, fast track coal, linear now bearing 0, A2 range 9 nautical miles, longbow cannot shoot inside the floor, shield has to take it. He reaches for a control he doesn't have, and leaves his hand hovering over the console as if the air could carry a command down a wire. Halberd, Leena asks, Petrel up, Halberd's controller says. Shield locked single track now split, locked both, Launch authority, fire. Leena says, and then stops because the time. Space picture on Hale's scope shows something that makes her shoulders go cold. Resolute begins a quick turn to starboard to unmask the main battery and present a smaller cross section. It is a good maneuver for guns and a terrible one for lines of sight. The arc of the turn swings Resolute's superstructure between Halberd's launcher and the incoming threat. Negative, Hale barks. He forgets he's not supposed to bark. We're in their line. We're blocking Halberd's Petrel. Stop the turn. Leena bites back the word that wants to come out and chooses the one her chair is built for. Helm ease, stop the swing. Hold heading 310. Do not mask Halberd. Do not copy. The helmsman says, hands fighting the sea and the metal both. The deck shudders as the sea reminds everyone who truly owns it. Too late, the thought hangs in the air. On Halberd, the launcher waits for a geometry it can't see. Petrel shows a sliver of red where Resolute's tower was a moment ago and is not now. The solution clears, the locked tone returns. Fingers press that have trained to press and dreamed to press and wish they'd pressed half a second sooner. The second element commits. Three's voice is calm, but the air around it is full of physics that aren't. Rafi looks back once and sees what looks like two brief stars skim a wave and then vanish behind spray as Halberd's shield spits. He doesn't get to see what those stars do because his head snaps forward as a sheet of tracers lifts out of Resolute's forward mount and reaches for the air where he would be if he weren't already. Someplace else, guns offset, Selim says, the understatement making the word humor too big for it. Viper flight, jink and drag east, Rafi orders. Keep them busy. He steals a glance at his fuel. 7,000 looks like a blessing on paper and a lie in practice. Bingo in 1-5, he says, do not get clever. Clever gets you wet. On Resolute, Hale's screen goes momentarily indigo as sea clutter surges and then settles. He breathes and finds the 2 tracks again. Shields launch 2, time of flight 4 seconds. Impact he stops saying it because the sequence is too fast for words. On the bow camera, 2 white smears converge and then vanish in spray a dozen feet short of a kestrel that wanted the world to be 1 foot farther away. Miss someone says, and the word is so small for how big it feels. Petrel requiring, Halberd replies, voice flat to save it from cracking. Recycling solution, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Rafi can live an entire life in 10 seconds if he has to. He tilts the nose, skims the trough, and jinks toward the long, pale name on the Resolute's hull. He holds his pipper where the plates meet under the bridge. It's a map in his head as much as a picture in his glass. Selim, duck right at my release, cross their bow, copy 3-4 when 3 on the run, the second element says. 4 stacked, egress south. Rafi breathes in through his nose, out through his teeth, the way an instructor taught him a decade ago when his hands shook the first time he flew low enough to taste the ocean. The pipper settles, he squeezes, 2 more eggs drop, black on gray, their weight suddenly the seas to carry. His jet lightens and leaps, he banks, the world tilts, he feels the gun his ribs, he feels his ribs on the. He sees the bombs fall, not straight, but in a shallow, lobed arc shaped by speed and wind and wish. Guns, guns. Resolute's forward mount barks to itself, as if praise could lead the rounds to where they need to go. The shells stitch water at the tail of Rafi's wake, too late by the 1,000th of a decision. 1 bomb hits high on the wave, flattens into white, and slides before the delayed fuse wakes and thinks about doing anything at all. It finds nothing but water to be brave in. The second finds steel. It strikes low under the bridge, right where plates meet. It bites, it chews, it heads inward looking for air. It finds systems and ducting and bulkheads instead. It slows, the fuse counts, proud of itself for not being fooled by spray. It is still counting when metal below it tells it to go. It goes, the sound is not a fireball roar. It is a deep, felt thing, a cough through steel, a shove. Lights flicker, paint dust shakes from a seam. People go to ground and get up because training ties strings to their knees. Hit, Hale says eyes wide, under the bridge low. Damage control to forward comms and ops corridor. Power dip on bus 2, maintaining radar. He forces air through his teeth and talks silence back into his voice. We're still in the fight. Keep it that way, Leena says. Halberd status shield tracking. Second volley in 5, Halberd replies. We had a pre-arm fault on 1 loader. clearing it now. On the water lane, a dark smear shows where spray meets smoke. Sailors run, hoses move. Doors that have never been closed this fast before remember how. On the kestrel's net, Three's breath saws. Off, off, he calls. No joy on detonation. Egressing south, Rafi does. And answer with words, he answers with a turn that is both escape and taunt. He drags the formation east, making the ships track and shoot and waste time. Time is an asset like any other. He intends to spend the ships on their behalf. Viper 1, this is Viper 3. The second element says, calmer. What's your radon shield? Hungry, Rafi says. We don't feed it. We cut it off. He watches Selim's wake dance beside his like two handwriting samples under a magnifying glass, one steady, one showing the tremor the world keeps trying to provoke and failing. On Resolute, Hale calls ranges like a drum major. Lead pair aggressing east, second pair southbound, low 5 miles, shield ready in 3, longbow cannot engage, we're still at low look, down limits, he grinds teeth at the geometry. If they climb, they die, they want, a voice crackles on the net, kite 1, 2 clear to the south, bingo fuel +1, landing at strip delta, good. One small good thing in a slate where most things slant wrong. Halberd's launcher shutters, 2 more little white stars spit. The dish locks, the calculus is better this time. The targets are lower and closer, and the sea is a fraction kinder. The missiles have authority. They chew toward the second element, which crosses their field like men trying to run across a street without admitting the cars are going too fast to measure with eyes. Break, Rafi shouts, a reflex learned at 1,000 feet and applied at 40. The kestrels kink in the air like fish that surprise themselves with the speed of their own turn. Shield's first burns out and tumbles short. The second stays cruel and smart an instant longer, then loses patience 10 yards behind a tailpipe and spears a wave instead. White leaps tall as a house, then collapses into a sheet that smells like iron and electricity. Miss Selim breathes again. This time the word isn't as big. The sea starts to believe them. Petrel cooling Halberd warns we're heat, limited, 30 seconds before next lock. 30 seconds is now, Leena mutters. Hale, damage control, forward compartments sealed, fire out. We've lost the forward comms closet and part of the operations corridor conduit. Redundancy holds, bus 2 stayed online, we're good. Hale says, the scope underlines his statement with 2 green arcs doing their best to look like confidence. The enemy doesn't care about anyone's confidence. The jets bank and roll and return to baseline. 3 calls reforming north. 4 is quiet, not because he is gone, but because the breathing he is doing is not compatible with sentence construction yet. In the lull that isn't a lull, Leena feels the thought she doesn't want. This is the space where bad decisions are born, between a failure and the next attack. You want to chase, you want to turn for gun solution. You want to keep the initiative even if the initiative is a lie. She bites it down and spits out something useful instead. Hold current course, do not block Halberd, confirm helm understands line of fire disciplines, confirmed, the helmsman says. Holding 310, no masking, what about the rocks? Someone asks, a man thinking about the chart and not wanting to say aloud the word that charts exist to save you from. We see them, Leena says. We've been kissing them all afternoon. We will not marry one. Spray slaps the windows. The ship groans, the world narrows again. Then Hale's voice goes very flat, the way a man's voice goes when he wants to be the calm part of the room. New picture, 2 additional low, fast tracks at 25 nautical miles, bearing 07, 9er, speed 510 knots. They are using the cadence reef for masking. That makes 6 total. Original pair is dragging east, the second element is south at 5 miles, the new pair will be on us in 3 minutes, 6, Leena says, not a question. A count, a rhythm, we will not get 6 good shots at this. Shield's heat is back, Halberd calls. Petrel good, longbow cold, kite 1 too clear, Hale adds, airspace deconflicted, good, Leena says. She files away the word for later when it can be savored. She won't be tasting anything delightful for a while. Rafi hears 3's call and feels the hair on his arms rise. More. There are always more. That means the ships will swing again to cover, and swing means lines cross, and crossed lines make radars blind and guns stupid and captains regret. He smiles into the mask where no one can see. Viper flight, listen, he says. We drag east and make them look at two problems. 3 and 4, you time your run when their mouths are full. You will have 5, maybe 10 seconds of bad geometry on their part. Take it, copy. 3 says, we see the mouth, well time our teeth. On Resolute, Hale's hand hovers over the console again. Habit, he lowers it. New pair entering horizon shadow, he says. Tracks degrade in 5-4, hold your fire until Petrel has a clean lane. Leena says to Halberd, do not let my mast be the reason you don't shoot. I, Halberd replies, strain hiding in the short vowels. The ocean decides to throw a bigger wave. Resolute climbs it. Halberd's bow disappears in spray, and then reappears dripping and grinning like a foolish dog. The launchers stay at ready. The deck crew stays braced. The men in the ops room keep their voices trained to stay small, so their words fit in ears already full of noise. Viper 1, Selim says, quiet, you see them, Rafi doesn't answer, he does, need to. The new pair's wakes cut twin lines on the sea like chalk dragged across slate and smeared by rain. They follow the reef's dark shoulder and then peel into the final lane. The ship's profiles grow wider in their glass. Time compresses into a pocket you can't put a fist into. Now, Rafi says to no one and everyone, 3, 4, now, 3's in is not a shout or a whisper. It is the exactly right size for the distance it has to travel. He pushes the nose down 1 degree and brings the pipper to bear on a slice of gray under Halberd's aft mount. He commits a future to a button, the bombs drop, the jet lightens, the wing scythes, the sea slaps back. On Halberd, the Petrel dish seizes the split tracks and holds them like it means to make them confess. The shield launcher should throw and doesn't. Fault, the controller yells. Launcher logic, hang target split too close to horizontal booting. Reboot now, Halberd's captain roars. Now. On Resolute, Leena turns to her helmsman and sees a truth she hateth course line that would clean the lane for Halberd's launcher will also swing her own superstructure right back into the way if the sea shoves at the wrong instant. She makes the decision that half of future critiques will hate and the other half will grudgingly accept. Helm steady, do not risk a mask. Halberd, you have your seconds, use them. Hale, guns free when they cross the bow. Guns free, Hale echoes, keying the battery. He never takes his eyes off the scope because he cannot watch the sea and the numbers at once, and the numbers pay his salary and announce his ghost. 3's bombs find water and steel almost at the same time. The fuses count too slow again. 1 disappears in a fan of white. 1 punches through a thin part of Halberd's deck and rattles something heavy below. It does not speak in flame. It speaks in bent metal and men thrown without blood in a pipe that will disagree with pressure later. Second element egressing south, Hale says, voice too calm. Calm feels like a kind of treason and is the only duty available. No secondaries. Petrel should be back in 543, Halberd's controller says. 2 Halberd's line is still blocked by Resolute's starboard arrays. A rating whispers, too low for anyone to hear, but geometry doesn't care about volume. Geometry is a god that demands failure without raising its voice. The new pair, 5 and 6 to Rafi's mind, names that do not matter inside this 5, second worlder already on the lane. They are the coin the sea places on the table when the house wants to see who is bluffing. Hale says the thing that frames the next breath for everyone in range. 2 inbound, range 6 nautical, altitude 40 feet. Petrel rebooted, but he swallows. Resolute's mast is kissing their line again. Halberd tries to swing. The sea laughs. The radar logic hums back to life, blind for a hiccup that feels like a year. In, Rafi whispers, useless to the physics but faithful to the ritual. He can feel the sweat frosting inside his gloves. He can feel the bomb racks empty under his wings, and the absence like missing teeth his tongue can't help probing. Hold, Leena says to no one and everyone, fingers flat on the console edge, white at the knuckles so she doesn't add a tremor to a room that already has too many kinds of shaking. The jets bear in, the launchers hesitate, then decide. Guns spit in defiance of math. Somewhere aft, a sailor puts his hand on another sailor's back without registering the gesture as anything but balance. And in the half, breath before choices turn irreversible, the ops room fills with a new sound and alarm not for missiles or guns or fire, but for the thing no one wants to see blinking right now. Bus 2 voltage drop, Hale shouts, forward array flicker, Petrel's lane blocked for 1 more second. How long is 1 second today? Long enough to break a story, or make one. Take us through it, Leena says, voice quiet because the loud part is happening outside. Viper 3, clear, crackles the net, and then it's Rafi's turn to watch the little space between disaster and survival choose whose name it knows. He sees the noses come down, he sees the decks jump, he sees white spray jump higher, he sees Halberd's launcher twitch and then commit, just a heartbeat after the heartbeat it wished it had. Here we go, he breathes, the sea holds every breath that gets taken above it. It will decide which ones get returned. The bombs drop, the missiles leap, the ships turn just enough or not enough, and somebody's math is going to be right. Impact hail begins, and the word hangs in the red, lit air like a coin in a throat. Hale doesn't finish the word. The ship does it for him. The first bomb takes Resolute under the bridge, a knife into the seam where plates meet frames. The fuse earns its pay, it counts through steel, then snarls and speaks. The sound is a deep shove that arrives through the soles of boots and the backs of teeth. Lights blink, the ops room coughs dust. Every panel in forward comms says hello and goodbye at once. The second bomb hits lower, farther aft, where the ducting runs fat and the forward generator room hums. It doesn't ask permission, it punches in, slows against pipes and cable trays, and decides. The delayed fuse nods no, and the ship answers with a low animal noise. Power stutters, bus 2 drops to black. The main displays survive on the other bus by spite and design. Fire forward engineering, a voice snaps over the internal net. Flooding in aux 1, port list 8 degrees 9 cross, flood starboard. Leena orders, not raising her voice because shouting doesn't move water. Damage control central, shut watertight forward of frame 60, report. She grabs the console, steadies herself as the deck tilts underfoot. Hale, we still have track, Hale says, eyes on a scope that pops and wavers but tells the truth when it matters. Second element south, new pair aggressing east. Halberd's shield launch no, Halberd's launcher spits 2 white needles. Petrel holds a hard, clean lock. The missiles scythe low, their seekers snapping onto hot jet exhaust with the hunger of wolves that know the farm road by smell. They arrive in the second element's wake just as the sea reaches up to steal them. One detonates 10 yards off a tailpipe, a proximity burst that rips into control surfaces like a fistful of razors. The jet jerks, slaps a wingtip into the wave, and then is one with it. No time to eject, no time for anything but salt. 4's gone, 3 says, voice flat, because the words need to be made small to be made at all. Rafi sees it in a mirror of sea and sky. He says nothing aloud because there is nothing true enough for air. He presses his tongue to his molars and tastes iron and discipline. Selim on me, we go home east, he says, because flying is the job, and the job is the only way through. 3, drag south, don't turn clever, copy, Selim answers. His breath sits properly now, where it belongs, in out, like a man and not a metronome. On Resolute the list bites 10 degrees 11. The ship's internal geometry becomes a new place where stairs are cliffs and hallways lean wrong. Smoke creeps down a corridor where it is not welcome. Fire curtains up, comes the breathless call from Day Central. Boundary cooling established, forward generator room is compromised, switching to aft, rerouting power. Bus 2 is dead, we're on 1 in emergency, keep Petrel alive, Leena says. Keep longbow lit even if it can't shoot, we are not blind, she doesn't sit, she can't, the deck won't let her. She widens her stance and becomes a shape a ship can lean on. Hale, status on Halberd. Can they cover us? Halberd is green, Hale says. They have Petrel and shield. They took a punch they are still throwing. Good, Leena says, and tastes the grit on her teeth. Get me Halberd. Halberd copies, comes the reply. Background noise is a ship alive. We see your list. We're closing for cover and rescue if needed. Hold station upwind, Leena says. If we go that way. Don't get cute with the scaries. Understood, Halberd answers. Somewhere on her deck, a bosun stows a line with hands that know exactly how much rope a sea will demand as tax. Rafi drags east and feels the gun's last few angry shells walk the sea behind him. He resists the urge to jink purely for theater. Theater wastes fuel, fuel is blood. Selim, fuel state, he says. 6-1, Selim replies, bingo +1, 3. 5-8 im south of you, I can make it if the wind remembers how to be helpful. Let it, Rafi says. He looks once, just once, at the ship they hurt. Smoke feathers out and then shreds. Men move as dots in the spray. A helo's distant profile leans like a tightrope walker over gray. He pushes the view away. He looks at the alt tape and the fuel and the horizon line and the point in space where the reef's lee will keep him invisible until the last moment the sea allows. In Resolute's forward space, petty officers slam dogs on hatches until knuckles bleed under gloves. A seaman's boots slide on steel that is suddenly aslope. He catches a pipe with both hands and waits for his balance to return from wherever terror tries to send it. Keep moving, the chief says, and the words are a rope. Hale's console holds. He feeds the captain a picture that shortens distances to something words can split. Viper 1 and 2 eastbound, range increasing. Viper 3 south, range 5 miles no 6. No further inbound, you see this. You see what they did. Someone whispers at the back of the room, a man who needs to say it into the air to make it real. He shuts up when his department head looks at him with eyes full of rule. Leena looks up at the overhead like a person checks the sky for rain even when they are below decks. Report on flooding, she says. Port voids forward are full, Deke Central replies. We're cross, flooding starboard to check the list. Pumps on, we have progressive flooding in Aux 1. Teams cut access to fight through. Fire forward is under control. No magazine involvement. The last sentence is a prayer answered early. Casualty report, Leena asks. The word is too neat for its contents, but it is the only word you can use without breaking. Working, comes the reply. Initial, 2 injured forward, 1 critical in Aux 1, all accounted for on ops deck. Bridge manning intact. Keep counting, Leena says. Keep fighting. She lets herself look at the plot again. Clean arcs, empty inbound. Empty as a shape she can live with. Halberd closes, careful and competent. Ribs stand by, their crews small and fierce against the gray. The gap between hulls is a place only fools step into by accident and only professionals by intention. Captain Hale says quietly, we are holding, but the list is creeping. 11, 11 and a half. Cross flood is answering, but slow, if the wind shifts at want. Leena says, and the sea cause even the sea, is susceptible to certain tones of human voice appears to agree. The whitecaps behave, at least compared to what they might do, a minute then 2. Every long second adds itself to a stack that will later be called time to stabilize. As if time isn't made of heartbeats, list is steady, Deke Central reports, 10 degrees, cooling effective, flooding checked, pumps catching up, recommend we hold and not abandon. Leena breathes out slowly, not because it will make her lighter, but because she owes her bones a truce. We hold, she says, Hale long. Range, clear, Hale says, no new tracks. Viper 3 is now 8 miles south, dropping off our scope. Viper 1 and 2 are ghosts east. She nods. She doesn't let relief sit down. It can hover near the door and wait its turn. Signal Halberd, stand by rescue, but hold off transfer. We stabilize first, she says. Hale says, he wants to say something else, something human, something about how the world narrowed and widened in 10 minutes, but this is not the room for it. Later, if later happens, it does but slowly, like a tide that remembers which way is out. The fires shrink under water and foam. Smoke thins to a smell that people who do this work carry home on collars and sometimes never ask their spouses to learn. The list eases to 9, then 8. Men in wet gear grin the way men grin when they aren't allowed to laugh. The main gun is quiet, the launchers stare at nothing and like it. On Halberd, the ops console shows a picture that any sailor can love. Friendly arcs, empty threat. The captain runs a hand down his face and leaves a clean streak where salt had dried. We stay with her until the tug comes, he says. We don't leave family, his SO replies. He looks at the crew on the ribs. He looks at the line handlers. He looks at the hole in the deck where a dud thought it was a fish. He thinks if that fuse had been a whisper faster. He does not say it. East, the kestrels run the troughs until the reef's shoulder gives them a shadow big enough to hide a crime and a lesson. Then Rafi noses up 3 degrees, asking the sky for a margin. The alt tape slides to 60, then 80. The radar that mattered a moment ago will matter again soon. Selim, check, he says. Green, Selim replies. His voice holds something new. It might be age. It might be something the sea lent him when he wasn't looking. 3. Here comes the reply, late enough to count as a prayer returned. Fuel ugly, but here. Keep the troughs, Rafi says. Home plate in 10, he clicks his tower frequency. Tower, Viper flight inbound, feet, wet, 3 ships, 1 damaged platform reported. We're Winchester and thirsty. He intones and it sounds like much less than what it is. Viper flight, copy, the controller says. Voice calm in the way men are calm when they do not see the water under your seat. Runway is yours on arrival. They land without ceremony. The brakes cough heat. The jets roll to a stop like animals that have gotten away with something, and now must behave so that the getting away remains true. Ground crew swarm, nobody shouts. Shouting wastes the part of the day when a hand on a shoulder says more. Rafi kills the engines and sits an extra breath before cracking the canopy. Salt dries white in a stripe under his cheek. Years from now he will find this smell in a jacket and remember today without wanting to. He climbs down. Selim drops to the tarmac and looks at the horizon, which has returned to being a line instead of a threat. 4, he asks, voice smaller because the sky is bigger this close to home. Rafi shakes his head once. That's all. They stand there long enough that a crew chief makes a sign with his hand that means move and another with his face that means I get it. On Resolute, the roll call finishes, numbers, names. The watch officer writes them on a board that gets wiped when the day ends and sometimes does. 2 critical to Med Bay, he says. 1 missing from forward engineering. Search team is on tether. The ship holds still for that 1 second it takes. The team returns with a truth shaped like a station card with a name on it that will be read into a log with reverence and no adjectives. Leena signs the log when the time is right. She stands on the bridge and feels the ship breathe slow. She looks at Halberd and raises a hand. The other captain raises his. The sea does not speak, but it calms 1 notch as if tired of its own noise. Hale, she says, put a message together. Skipper, to everyone, she says. Thank them for earning the numbers today. Tell them the holes we have are the holes we kept. Tell them the line of fire rules kept our family from shooting itself. Tell them longbow did what physics allowed and no more. Tell them Petrel cooked and shield did what it was built for. Tell them well see the tug and the pier and well tie up on our own lines. She pauses. And write to Halberd drinks on us when we're alongside. If the galley can keep coffee hot, authority authorizes extra cups. Hale smiles then, a real thing that doesn't ask permission. Aye, he says, "I'll put it nice. The tug arrives in the gray afternoon, stout and small and undeniable." Line snake, steel complains and yields. Resolute turns her wounded side away from the wind in a slow, stately pivot that feels like a bow to nothing and everything. At dusk the deck is quieter. Smoky light paints the scar under the bridge in a color between purple and lesson. Leena walks out. The deck rolls under her boots less than it did, more than it should. She looks down at a dented railing. A sailor has tied a length of line to it not because the line is needed, but because making a knot in a place that looks hurt is a language men at sea speak to ships and one another. She touches the knot. She thinks of the second where geometry held Halberd's launch, and what it cost and what it saved. She thinks of the choice not to turn and block. She thinks of the inch of fuse that could have set a different line of history. She thinks of the crews on the other side too, because fairness is a discipline for professionals. Pilots popped canopies somewhere east. A man didn't come home. Someone will write his name on a board. The sea will keep a part of him it didn't ask permission to take. Night pulls down over Harrow Strait. The scaries whisper in the wind, rocks talking rock. A gull lands on a rail and looks offended on principle. The sea climbs and falls and carries all the breath it took today. Back on the tarmac, a maintenance chief wipes salt from a kestrel's nose and shakes his head. 40 feet, he mutters, 40 feet between a story and a statistic. He doesn't know he's echoing a captain on a ship hell never see. He doesn't need to. The echo finds its own way. The report goes up the chain. Words like terrain masking, min range lockout, line of fire interference, and voltage drop on bus 2. File past eyes that sign for budgets in letters to families. The numbers at the end are smaller than they could have been and larger than anyone wanted. Resolute, Hetwo killed, 7 injured, Halberd non-killed, 3 injured, 1 kestrel lost, 3 return. Tally lines that look like a ledger when what they are is a temperature reading of men and machines in weather. A day later, Resolute limps into harbor under her own power with a tug that refuses to be thanked. People on the pier clap. It isn't for show. It's because sometimes the ordinary miracle of steel that doesn't quit needs an amen. Halberd shadows her in with a posture that reads as pride if you stand the right way. Leena goes last down the gangway when the shore party relieves. She is not the last aboard, Thighs isn't that kind of story toddy, but she is one of the last to step onto the pier because captains don't like to leave their ships, even when the ship is technically at home. She looks back, the scar gleams in docklight. Well, fix you, she says to steel and to herself. Well, fix what steel can't forgive too. In a quiet office, Hale prints a copy of the scope recording and slides it into a folder marked with a date in a line that says Harrow Strait, line Neo, fiery lessons. It will be shown to crews who will fight in weather that hasn't been invented yet with machines that don't exist. The sea will be the same. In a quiet hangar, Rafi writes 3 letters, one to a mother whose son flew as 4, one to a crew chief whose quick hands made a fuse safe on a day when nothing wanted to be, one to himself, to be opened when his hands forget to shake. Selim walks to the base chapel, sits, and does nothing for 5 minutes. It looks like prayer. Maybe it is. He leaves and goes to the hangar and checks a panel he checked an hour ago because the habit of touching what keeps you alive is the other half of this job. Pastorals are not part of this story, they never are. This is a work of altitudes and ranges and men who obey geometry until geometry blinks. The sea doesn't clap, it only keeps time. What decided it today? Min-range gates that closed a door at the red second. Terrain that gave ghosts to a radar, a line of fire blocked by steel that needed to seem smaller than it was. A bus that burped and starved an array in exactly the wrong breath, and people who did not stop. When a system hesitated, a sailor didn't. When an algorithm got clever and fell on its face, a helmsman held a heading like a promise. You were there in the ops room and in the cockpit and on the deck. You felt the deck tip and the spray hit the glass. You heard the alarm that waited for you and answered it anyway. So tell me, that moment bent the day toward the harbor instead of the bottom. Did the constraints make the caller the people who refused to be defined by them? If this mission gripped you, like and subscribe to keep these stories coming. Drop your thoughts below. At battle should we break down next? Operation Praying Mantis, Bika Valley Seed? A submarine hunt in a fjord at night? Your pick shapes the next mission. Dawn drags a gray sheet over Harrow Strait. The scaries look like sleeping animals. The sea remembers the shapes it threw yesterday and smooths them with cold hands. On AFS Resolute, the scar under the bridge looks less angry in this light. Welders spark and spit on a patch plate that will hold until something better than hurry can take over. The list is 4 degrees now, pumps hum. The ship feels like a stubborn, patient-live, irritated, improving. Captain Leena Ward walks the forward passage where plates bent. Boot heels echo. She stops where paint dust still clings to a frame like frost. She touches the steel. It's warm with work. Well, make you prettier later, she says. Well, make you stronger now. In the ops room, Lieutenant Hale builds a replay. Scope lines scroll like a heartbeat. Range rings, bearing ticks, little triangles that tried to be bigger than physics. He narrates in a voice built for officers who weren't there, and sailors who were, but want to see it from the ceiling. Here the first pair uses the island's shadow. Longbow cannot burn through the clutter at 40 feet. Min-range gate hits at 14 miles. We shoot at 15. Seeker loses the path when the lead drops behind a wave face. The missile goes stupid for a good reason. He clicks forward. Here Halberd's Petrel locks the merged blob. When the targets split close to the horizon line, the classifier crashes solution hang. Reboot takes 30 seconds. We hate it. We plan for it next time. A junior tech raises a hand. Sir, resolve on the bus drop. Hale zooms. Shock from the second hit throws a breaker in the forward distribution that rides too close to a console we shake too often. The isolation mount we specs last year was rejected to save half a day. In the yard, we paid it back all at once. He doesn't say I told you so. He circles it in red. We changed the mount today. In a hangar east, Captain Rafi Qadir stands with an ordnance chief at a bench where fuses sit like little arguments. The chief taps a timing ring with a knuckle, scarred the way hands get when they've learned their job with tools and not just documents. You ran half across the board, the chief says. Half, second delay, set for plating, not for water. At 40 feet, water is plating, Rafi says. He holds a fuse like he's holding a question. One skipped, one dudded, two that hit too deep by a hair. Set one for instant on the wing that passes lower, one for quarter, delay on the other. The chief says they won't behave the same when they kiss spray. Give physics a menu, Rafi nods. We mix the basket, he says. Selim flies the instant, I keep the quarter. 3 runs scared the ship. A 4th would have sunk the day. We don't need to get greedy with luck, he signs the sheet. The chief signs too. The stack of forms looks thin compared to the force they claim they can shape. Back on the pier, a dive team climbs Resolutes side like spiders with tanks. They vanish into green. They come back with nods and slates. Hole is punched clean under frame 58. The diver reports to the damage control officer. No jagged edge that'll argue with the patch. You got lucky on angle. We bought luck with a training budget, the deco says and means it. Leena meets the families of her injured at the wardroom door. This room sees celebrations and quiet. Today is the quiet kind. They are stable, the medical officer says. He keeps his sentences in the middle register, where courage and truth compare notes and shake hands. She writes letters. She has written this type before. She hates that practice made her better at it. She uses words that don't lie and sentences that don't try to be poems when they must be fences. She includes a line for each, the last hour we saw him, the last thing he did that showed who he was. On Halberd, the point defense crew sits for a hot wash they want and don't. The controller rolls the timeline. We classified merged and hung on split, he says. Reboot race was 32 seconds, too long. We reconfigure the logic tree to age the merge differently, the tech says. We bias split suspicion under 100 feet angle. Well get ghosts, well have to ignore, but well have locks, the captain listens. Write the false alarm plan, he says. It'll take chatter and no shot over clean silence and no shot. He looks at his SO. And the helm doctrine change is real. Nobody swings into anyone's line again for a gun solution. We codify mask calls. If you even think we might block, you shout. Mask, the ship answers. Clear. We drill it until the word tastes like coffee. I, the SO says, already writing. On a different day, language kept 2 ships from shooting one another. He puts the word mask on a whiteboard and draws a ring around it 3 times. Midday, a helo thumps into the gray above the strait. Kite 1, 2, the crew slept and refueled and came back because some jobs finish later and require stubbornness as the primary tool. They fly a search box where 4 went under. The sea keeps its opinions, a torn panel, a cushion, a smear of fuel rainbow torn thin by waves. They mark the spot exactly, because exactitude is the duty of people who know their hands can't fix everything. They radio the grid with voices that learned long ago to hold what they are carrying without cracking. At the attacker airfield, Selim sits under the wing with a sandwich he does eat. He stares at nothing and everything. Rafi squats beside him, they say little. Silence in pairs is different from silence alone. Finally, Selim blinks. He rolled when the proximity went, he says. He would have saved it if the sea had been a hand, not a wall. Rafi nods. We tell his mother a sentence that tells the truth and leaves the love inside the truth, he says. We place his name on the board with his rank and the date and nothing more. We carry what words can't. The ops chief leans out the hangar door with a note. Intelligence relayed imagery, he calls. Your friend's limped home. The one you bit is afloat and fixing. The other has teeth that still work. Rafi stands. We didn't come to sink a ship, he says. We came to cut a day in half. We did. Orders arrive in folders that taste like politics and smell like oil. Stand by, the paper says. We measure the effect. We will choose the time for the next swing when the picture moves a square to the left. Evening on the pier, a memorial roll calls a name that only recently fit on a page. The chaplain reads a psalm because this pier belongs to people who believe different things but believe in hearing names said out loud in the wind. Leena listens with her hat brim low and her eyes on the deck where a knot stayed tied all day. She does turn when a sailor behind her clears his throat to stop it from hurting. Night again. Harrow Strait turns black and silver. a world made of mercury. Lights on Halberd and Resolute paint paths across water that refuses to be painted. In the attack squadron ready room, a whiteboard wears math, fuel arcs, alt tapes, fuse schematics, an errant wave drawn like a dragon's back as a joke that isn't one. The commander points with the marker cap. Lessons, he says. Selim speaks first. Fuse mix. Don't trust one timing to answer 20 variables. Water adds an unknown. Give it options. Rafi adds no pop-up, ever. The only sky today is the pocket under their radar. Climb, you die. Stay low, you might live twice. A maintainer says, seal the canopy better for spray. Salt killed 2 EUs last month. Not ours today, but someone else's tomorrow. We fix it. A young pilot at the back asks, do we go back? The commander caps the pen. We wait, he says. When we go for a reason other than pride. Pride is a fuel that burns too fast. He looks at Rafi. Write the letter to Four's family, he says, soft. You flew his wing more than his friends did at the end. Rafi nods. I started, he says. I will finish. We owe him paragraph breaks. On Resolute, Hale prints the new mask call card and slides it into the helm station like a small vaccine. The helmsman reads it in the low light. He turns it over. He reads the back. He puts it into muscle memory by moving his mouth without sound. Mascler. He sees lines in his head and keeps them from crossing with a hand that knows weight. The engineering team bolts a shock isolation mount into a space that used to hate them. It resists and then gives. The new mount sits there, quiet, like a ring under a tooth that will keep pain from swallowing the face next time. An electrician runs a jumper, secures it, tugs, nods. He touches the cabinet with respect. He doesn't trust a machine more than a person, but he treats both with the same care. Halberd drills the new call, mask. The controller barks at imaginary geometry, clear. The bridge answers, and they do it again until nobody smiles when the timing is perfect, because perfect is now expected and not a surprise. Leena sits with her SO and the damage control officer in a wardroom that smells faintly of coffee and welding flux. We talk petty, she says. We talk screws and paint. Then she adds lower, we talk about what we tell the families and what we tell the men about how we kept Halberd from killing us when our hull wanted to turn. The SO nods. We say we were trained and lucky, he says. We say luck favors cheap lessons when training pays in advance. They plan the right ups. They plan the dock time. They write 3 names in chalk on a board. Busemount, mask drill, Petrel reclass. Encircle them. The circles are not decoration. They are promises. Days slip. The tug nudges them to a dry berth. Steel finds heat in new shapes. Plates go on, paint goes down, the scar does vanish. It transforms into a story you can walk past without flinching. On a night with clear stars for once, Hale and the radar tech take coffee to the bow and lean on a railing that learned a lesson yesterday. They don't say a lot, they say enough. Remember the sound, the tech asks. It wasn't loud, not the boom, the after, like the ship pushing back with her ribs. I remember the word I didn't get to finish, Hale says. Impact. It was both a noun and the feeling of realizing you don't need to say it when the world says it for you. Will you sleep? The tech asks. Yes, Hale says. You'll sleep like a man whose list is 4 degrees and stable. Good, the tech says. Me too. At the airfield, a new fuse sits in a clear box with a label half. Joking half. Sermon. Mix your basket. It says in marker. The crew chief gives it a pat like it's a dog that stayed. Rafi drops a letter into a slot that clacks softly and closes. He stands with his hand on the blue paint like a man feeling the temperature of a door he's about to walk through. He steps back, he breathes. He walks toward the hangar and the jet he and Selim will fly again, because the sea didn't take all their futures yesterday. The report cycles, staff officers find their phrases, newspapers write what they can without breaking rules. People at home read cease, skimming and low, level and don't feel their stomachs move up into their mouths. That's fine. Not everybody needs to know how 40 feet feels. What did decide the day? They ask it in briefings and bars and between turns of wrenches. A minimum range gate closed a door in the sky and made a missile a spectator. Terrain made ghosts that even good radars respect. A line of fire discipline call kept one ship's steel from making a friend's sensors blind at the worst half. Second, a shocked bus spilled power at the wrong Brett, and a mount installed afterward makes sure that story gets told only once. And hands on valves in ankle, deep water, hands on wrenches that bit thumbs and still turned, hands on throttles that stayed low when every instinct wanted to climb over fear, hands on hatches that closed without asking permission, hands on pens that signed for reports and for receipts, and for letters that needed to get written before the next tide. At the very edge of things people control, the sea kept its part of the bargain, indifferent, competent, fair in a way that doesn't feel like mercy and isn't cruelty. It held breath, returned some, kept some. No anthem plays over this. The videos later will slow the missile launches and the bomb drops and add drums. The men and women who were there will not need drums to remember. They will remember a tone in a headset that is neither voice nor weather. They will remember a console blinking indigo. They will remember the taste of dust shaken from paint. They will remember a captain's hand flat on a rail that needed someone's palm as much as it needed a patch. And your eyes were in that ops room, in that cockpit, on that deck. You watched the geometry tighten and the math fight the sea. You felt the second when the array blinked and the launcher hesitated, and someone's training grabbed the wheel and steadied it. You were there when a bomb became a lesson instead of a sinker. So Muir did the day turn. On a fuse measured in fractions. On a helm held 3 degrees truer than fear. On a word Escape said quickly enough to keep 2 crews in the same story. If you made it this far, like and subscribe to keep these constraint-driven battle stories coming. Drop your take below should we break down Operation Praying Mantis next, or go low and silent with the Bekaa Valley Seaid run. Want a cold, night submarine hunt through a fjord? Your vote sets the next mission. And if this deep dive got your heart rate up at 40 feet Eggle, consider a super thanks to support more cinematic, daily, true combat narratives.